Good day, folks, and welcome to another edition of Lumberjack Logic. I'm your host, Neil Johnson. Always excited to be with you and to share the news with you. Here's the thing. Joe Rogan and Bernie Sanders. If you remember back in 2020, they were like Bernie bros, man, because Joe Rogan actually endorsed him for president in the 2020 campaign. Now, mysteriously, Joe Biden pulled everything together, got 81 million votes, if you can believe it. If you can't believe it, I don't know what to tell you. It's all been fact-checked. But here's the thing. I mean, even out of CNN, Bernie Sanders draws criticism for touting Joe Rogan endorsement. They accuse Joe Rogan of being making racist, homophobic, and transphobic comments. That's right, because if you don't believe that men can't be women, well, you're a transphobe, my friends. And if you believe that a man and a woman were designed to be together versus guys and guys, well, then you're a homophobic. It's all crazy. The Sanders campaign touted the endorsement in a tweet featuring a clip of Joe Rogan's supportive remarks. Joe said, "I think I'll probably vote for him. Him as a human being. When I was hanging out with him, I believe in him. I like him. I like him a lot," Rogan said on an earlier episode of his show. So here's the thing. This is just, 5 short years ago, they were tight. They were buddies. But then what happened was Bernie Sanders went on the show, and Joe Rogan has woken up to a few things, and we're going to watch that clip. But please go check out my sponsor, MyPillow, mypillow.com/lumberjack for big savings on the best sleep products available.
You got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that, there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax. I think the last 10 years have been the warmest on record.
So in Bernie's professional opinion, it ain't a hoax. You know what's interesting? I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's a hoax, or do you think it's real? And do you think it's real, but the government's just trying to intervene too much on this issue and it's costing us too much money? I really am curious to get your thoughts in the comments below. But I do want to mention that Bernie Sanders, along with the rest of the Democrats in the party, promoted the Russia collusion hoax. They also believe that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. So I don't know if we're going to talk about hoaxes. But here's where Joe Rogan pushes back on this. And he does it so well.
I think the climate change issue is very complicated. And I think, did you see the Washington Post piece that they wrote where they did this long-term view? First of all, the reality is that the Earth's temperature has never been static, right? We could both agree on that. It's always been up and down. There's been ice ages and heat waves. And then the Washington Post looked at it. What was the time period that they looked at? That essentially they found that we're in a cooling period. That the Earth over the past X amount of years, and this was like a very inconvenient discovery, but they had to report the data, and kudos to them for doing that.
It is rather unbelievable that this did come out in the Washington Post. They did actually report the data. Now, Earth.org is taking issue with Joe Rogan as well, and they say this. For months, Joe Rogan has been repeatedly telling his millions of listeners that we are living in a cooling period, questioning the very idea of a climate emergency. He couldn't be more wrong. Now, what's interesting is they then show the graph and admit that we are cooling. But just in these last few years, we've been jumping up in temperature. And here's the thing with that. So they're trying to say, in the last 30 years, we've had this rapid temperature increase. You can go back at other points in their data, which, these are the people that tell you that the Earth is billions of years old and that we came out of a sludge pit and we were amoebas, and an amoeba is to a fish, is to a frog, is to a bird, is to a reptile, is to a mammal, right? Or however that works out. Because when does a good arm become a bad arm? And then how do you transition to a good leg? None of it makes any sense to me, folks. If you believe in evolution, knock yourself out. I think it's all a sham. But here's the thing. If you want to just take their data and take it at face value, their data actually shows that we have been much warmer in periods of history. And you can see that here on this graph. But they do say, to Rogan's credit, the timeline, which took 2 years to compile, includes long periods where temperatures were significantly higher than they are now. An example of this can be seen some 250 million. See, this is where they lose me again. I'm supposed to take these people serious. They're telling me that we came from primordial soup. The leap of faith to believe this stuff is nonsense. But back to Rogan.
Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't read that article, but
Yeah.
the scientists who are out there, I think.
I know, but there's a lot of money involved in that too, Bernie. That's part of the problem. There's a lot of money involved in this whole climate change emergency issue, and there's a lot of control.
Rogan is spot on here because control is what this is all about. And you can remember other areas where they've tried to control us desperately in the last 5 years, trying to get us to take injections into our body. They're talking about digital currencies. Like if that isn't a measure of control, when they can just shut down your currency digitally, take your money away from you and rob you. People don't understand the threats of some of these. They got these normies running around out there going, it's all just a conspiracy. No, it's not. We just lived through it.
And that's a big part of this problem. Not only that, if we're just talking about primarily carbon and carbon footprint, what are we going to do about China? Because China...
Absolutely. It's not an American issue. It is a global issue. And all I can tell you is that we are, in my view, going to see more extreme weather disturbances in the coming years than we have ever. And we're seeing them right now.
I love how Bernie we'll just skip over the China issue because it's a world problem, but the U.S. just needs to do more because we always need to be doing more because we always need to foot the bill. It doesn't matter if it's NATO, if it's climate change. It doesn't matter. Nobody else needs to do anything. It's just America. It's just insanity. Okay, but do you see how Bernie just skips over that? And he skipped over the data, and then he just tells you that, in my opinion, we're just going to see more of this, and then there's these weather events. There's always weather events.
Right, but scientists don't agree. Well, this is where it gets confusing because scientists that are in agreement, there's all these entanglements. Whenever someone's discussing something, whether it's economics or whether it's health issues or pharmaceutical drugs, there's financial entanglements. I think we both agree with that, right?
Yep.
And I think this is part of the issue with this whole climate change emergency as well, because whenever there's an issue that everyone can agree on, you're going to have a bunch of people that capitalize on that issue and they look to gain more money. They have financial issues that they push forward in order to capitalize on this issue, but then also power and control. These things like they're trying to institute in the UK where they have these 15-minute cities, this concept where you're not allowed to travel. They'll be able to look at your carbon footprint. See, that's the problem. The problem is giving people that are in power, these people that we've all discussed that have so much money and so much control over our societies, multinational corporations, giving them more control over citizens. And this is a vehicle for that. And this is what's dangerous about this whole climate change emergency, because it allows these creeps that have been controlling people and controlling what you do and what you say and how you spend your money with people that are already living check to check, and you put additional constraints on them and you make them even more scared. And then you put additional measures where you can look at their carbon footprint, you can look at the amount they travel, put a carbon tax on these people, let's figure out how to extract more money from them. That's what bothers me about this climate change emergency.
That's what bothers me about this climate change emergency too. And I honestly think you're sitting there with Bernie, and Bernie's getting his campaign funded by these same entities. He aligns himself with these same entities. So I don't, why isn't Bernie more concerned about the working man in all of this? Because Rogan's right. What are we going to do? Level carbon taxes on people? I mean, we've seen remember the Biden administration and the EPA and how it was eliminate gas stoves. I mean, you get into some of these areas up here in northern Minnesota, and the electric bills for people are so high that propane is a much better option for their stove. But they don't care about that. They honestly don't. Otherwise, they would be doing policies that actually benefited the working man and the average citizen. And so Bernie says that he's against these multi-billion-dollar corporations and he's against all these billionaires and trillionaire whatever. I don't see it. I don't see it in his actual real policies. I hear it in his talking points. But I just think he's a liar. Hey, please go check out my sponsor, MyPillow, mypillow.com/lumberjack, because Mike Lindell is not making big money these days because he's been banned from so many stores because he stood up for something he believed in. And right now you can get that 5-pack of Bible pillows for only $30. Great gift if you have kids or grandkids, folks. It has the Bible story on the front in a painting and the Bible story on the back that you can read out to them. Go check it out at mypillow.com/lumberjack. The Black Friday sales are going on now. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace out.